Philippine government has publicly accused China of carrying out marine research in waters it says are within the jurisdiction of the Philippines. The allegation is short and stark, but it sits atop a complex history of competing claims, fraught diplomacy, and a body of international law that sets the rules and the limits for what coastal states and foreign vessels may do at sea. To understand why a claim of illegal marine research matters, we need to step back from the headline and look at the sea itself. The waters at the center of this dispute are not empty blue spaces on a map. They are home to fishermen and coastal communities, sensitive coral reefs and seagrass beds, migratory patterns of tuna and other commercially valuable species, and underwater features that have long been eyed for their potential resources. They are also the stage for a long-running territorial contest between the Philippines and China, among others, that has shaped politics and security across the wider region. Under the Global Maritime Order codified in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, coastal states exercise sovereign rights and jurisdiction over a 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone measured from their baseline. Within that zone, the coastal state has the right to explore, exploit, conserve and manage natural resources, and it has duties and authority over activities such as marine scientific research. In short, when scientific work is done in or about an exclusive economic zone, the consent of the coastal state is typically required. That principle is central to the complaint being made. This accusation comes against the backdrop of well-documented tensions in the South China Sea and adjacent waters. The Philippines and China have clashed before over fishing rights, maritime features, and the presence of vessels near contested shoals and reefs. In 2016, an international tribunal ruled in favor of the Philippines in a case that challenged expansive. The tribunal found that certain claims of historic rights were inconsistent with the convention and underscored the limits on maritime jurisdiction. Beijing dismissed that ruling, and the legal and political divide has endured amidst that ruling. Allegations of unauthorized scientific activity strike a particular nerve because research can be a cover for many kinds of intervention, detailed mapping and data collection, sampling of the seabed and water column, installation of instruments or sensors, and other activities that could support future resource development or the enhancement of maritime presence. Seismic surveys and deep-sea sampling, for example, can be intrusive to marine life and might be perceived as preparatory steps toward exploitation. For coastal communities that depend on the sea for their livelihoods, these are not abstract technical questions. The health of the marine environment is central to daily survival. There are immediate diplomatic consequences when one go. Vernon accuses another of unauthorized activity in its waters. A standard response is the filing of a formal diplomatic protest, a note verbal or an official statement demanding explanation and cessation. Governments may summon envoys for clarification, lodge complaints in regional forums, and seek international attention to assert pressure. National coast guards or naval forces may increase patrols and escorts for local fishers. The optics matter. Visible enforcement or the presence of surveillance assets can both reassure domestic audiences and escalate tensions at sea. From a legal standpoint, the claim centers on consent and jurisdiction. If the waters in question are indeed within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone or continental shelf, then the coastal state has primary rights over scientific research. Foreign vessels conducting marine scientific research in those areas would normally need permission. The requirement exists to ensure research does not undermine conservation, resource management or security, and to protect coastal states' sovereign interests. Where consent is refused or not granted, conducting such research can be characterized as unlawful, an intrusion that may invite diplomatic rebuke or other measures. But the situation on the water is rarely clear-cut. Maritime boundaries, especially in archipelagic settings, and contested seas are often disputed or not formally delimited. Features that appear on nautical charts may be contested on the ground, exact coordinates of activities can be disputed, and the institutional mechanisms for clarifying incidents are at times underdeveloped. Surveillance and verification are imperfect. Satellite imagery, automatic identification system tracks, and on-the-spot reporting are helpful, but each has limits. In many cases, governments rely on a combination of direct observation, vessel tracking, and intelligence to build a case for a formal protest. Any accusation of illegal research will also be filtered through domestic political lenses, governments under domestic pressure to defend sovereignty respond in ways calibrated for both audiences at home and partners abroad. For the Philippines, coastal fishing communities are a potent constituency. Protecting their access to fishing grounds is a tangible measure of state effectiveness. For China, projecting presence and protecting what it characterizes as legitimate activities in its claimed maritime spaces serves political narratives about national interest and territorial security. Between those domestic incentives lies the diplomatic choreography, statements, rebuttals, and sometimes quiet negotiations that never make it to public view. The environmental implications deserve close attention. Marine scientific research, when properly conducted and coordinated, contributes to knowledge about ocean health, fish stocks, and climate impacts. It can inform better management and conservation. But when research is conducted without consent or oversight, it can carry risks: disturbance to seabed habitats, disruption of breeding grounds, or the collection of samples that could facilitate extractive activities. The fragility of coral reefs and coastal ecosystems means that even well-intentioned research requires careful protocols, environmental assessments, and local engagement. When those safeguards are bypassed, the result can be damage that is hard to reverse. There is also a strategic dimension. The South China Sea and adjacent waters are crucial maritime corridors for global trade and strategic movement. Activities that enhance a presence, whether through physical infrastructure, permanent installations, or detailed oceanographic knowledge, can have downstream effects on military and security calculations. Maritime data can be used to optimize submarine or surface operations, to locate undersea cables or pipelines, or to identify resource-rich areas. Consequently, accusations about research often carry an I. Implicit question: is this purely scientific, or does it serve broader strategic aims? Regional responses to such incidents are varied. Neighbouring states watch closely and sometimes voice concern, particularly within multilateral forums that aim to manage tensions and promote freedom of navigation. Southeast Asian countries have long sought a rules-based approach to maritime conduct, and many support diplomatic avenues for dispute resolution. External partners, including major maritime powers, may express support for stability and adherence to international law without taking sides on sovereignty claims. The practical problem is that institutions designed to prevent escalation are often weak when faced with entrenched national positions and overlapping claims. What happens next, in practical terms, tends to follow a familiar pattern. The accused state will either deny the allegation, claim its activities are lawful, or offer an explanation that frames the work as benign scientific inquiry. The accusing state will demand clarification, present any evidence it has, and seek assurances that the activity will stop. Both sides may agree to communicate to prevent miscalculation, or tensions may rise if either side takes enforcement actions at sea. Ideally, dialogue channels, whether bilateral maritime working groups, Coast Guard hotlines, or diplomatic contacts, are used to clarify facts and prevent incidents from spiraling. For ordinary people living by the sea, the dispute is not an abstract diplomatic puzzle. Fishers may find their usual grounds contested or crowded. Local economies may feel the impact if access to resources is restricted. Conservation efforts can be undermined by activities that damage habitats or disrupt monitoring programs. There is also a psychological toll. Communities that have seen clashes in the past may be wary, and the prospect of confrontation can weigh on livelihoods and daily routines. There are also constructive paths forward. Transparency and cooperation on marine research can reduce suspicion. Joint scientific programs, coordinated data sharing agreements, and independent environmental assessments create opportunities for building trust while advancing knowledge. Where mutual benefit can be demonstrated, for example, collaborative studies on fish stock health that inform sustainable management for all users, the incentives for cooperation grow stronger. Confidence-building measures, such as agreed notification procedures for research vessels and joint monitoring exercises, can reduce the risk of misunderstandings. The legal framework remains a critical reference point. Conflict. UNCLOS and related norms provide a basis for assessing rights and responsibilities. Where legal disputes exist, arbitration and adjudication have been used as tools, though their effectiveness depends on the willingness of parties to accept and implement rulings. Diplomatic remedies and bilateral negotiations can be quicker and more pragmatic. but they require political will and mutual recognition of the need to manage shared seas responsibly. At the end of the day, the claim that marine research has been conducted illegally is more than a line in a government statement. It is a symptom of unresolved tensions over maritime space, of the competing demands of economic development, environmental stewardship, and national security. It raises questions about who gets to decide how science is done on the high seas and in exclusive economic zones, who benefits from the knowledge gathered, and how risks to fragile ecosystems are managed. As the diplomatic choreography unfolds, the international community will watch for a few key signals. Will the accused nation provide a credible explanation or evidence of consent? Will the coastal state escalate enforcement or seek higher-level negotiations? And will third parties intervene to mediate or to reaffirm the primacy of international law? Most important, observers will watch the impact on the ground or on the water, where fishers, conservationists and local governments must contend with the practical realities of access, sustainability and safety. The incident underscores a larger truth about the modern maritime era. Seas that once seemed vast and distant are now tightly interwoven with national interests, scientific capability and commercial opportunity. The same tools that enable exploration and discovery also enable new forms of economic activity and strategic advantage. That dynamic makes clear rules, transparent processes and cooperative frameworks more important than ever. For the people whose lives depend on those waters, hope rests in clarity and calm. Clear rules about who may conduct research and under what conditions, transparent mechanisms for notifications and consent, and calm professional channels for resolving disputes without incident. If those elements are in place, the sea can remain, above all else, a shared space for work, livelihood, and the natural rhythms of marine life. In the coming days and weeks, the diplomatic notes will be exchanged, officials will issue statements, and analysts will pass the technical details. For now, the allegation registers as a warning flare, a reminder that in contested seas, scientific activity is never purely academic, and that the health of ecosystems, the rights of coastal states, and the stability of the region are all entwined. The way governments respond will shape not only the outcome of this incident, but the patterns of conduct that determine whether disputed waters become a zone of cooperation or a source of continued conflict.